She is from the underworld. The house next door had been abandoned for years, its walls cracked with time and its windows clouded with dust. But one night, under the glow of a crimson moon, a moving truck arrived. A woman stepped out. She was strikingly beautiful, too beautiful. Her skin was pale, almost luminescent, her eyes an unnatural shade of deep, endless black. She moved with an eerie grace, her long dark hair flowing as if caught in an invisible current. Liam, who lived in the house beside hers, watched from his bedroom window. He should have looked away, but something about her held him captive. The next day, she knocked on his door. "Hello," she said, her voice like a whisper in the wind. "I'm Lilith, I just moved in." Liam shook her cold hand, a shiver running down his spine. The grip was too firm, her fingers too long. From that moment on, strange things began happening. At night, Liam heard scratching sounds coming from her house. Not the scurrying of rats, no. This was deliberate, like nails clawing at wood, desperate to escape. One evening, he saw Lilith standing in her yard, staring at the sky, whispering in a language he had never heard. The air around her seemed distorted, as if reality itself was struggling to contain her presence. Then the nightmares started. Liam dreamt of a black abyss, of hands reaching out from the darkness, clawing at his skin. And at the center of it all was Lilith, smiling, her mouth far too wide, filled with jagged teeth. The truth unveiled. Determined to find out who or what his new neighbor really was, Liam did some digging. There were no records of a Lilith ever living in his town. The house she moved into had been abandoned for decades, following the mysterious disappearance of its last owner. Then he found an old article. A woman named Lilith had been accused of practicing dark rituals centuries ago. She had vanished without a trace, but legend said she hadn't died. She had descended into the underworld, and now she had returned. The door to the underworld. One stormy night, Liam heard it again, the scratching. This time, it was coming from inside his own house. He followed the sound to his basement. There, in the center of the floor, was a trapdoor that had never been there before. It was slightly open, and from within, two black-clawed hands were reaching out. Behind him, Lilith whispered, "You should have never looked into my past, Liam. Now I have to take you with me." The last thing Liam saw before the darkness consumed him was her face, her beautiful, unnatural face splitting open, revealing a gaping void filled with countless screaming souls. Then silence, and the trapdoor slammed shut. Forever. The missing persons. Days passed. Liam was gone and no one noticed, no one except his best friend, Claire. She had been trying to reach him for days. No texts, no calls, no sign of him at work or home. His house looked abandoned, as if no one had lived there for years. Desperate, Claire went next door. Lilith answered the door, smiling. "He left," she said. "Didn't tell you?" Claire felt a shiver crawl up her spine. Liam would never leave without telling her. Lilith's house smelled of damp earth and something metallic. Claire stepped back. "If you see him, tell him I'm looking for him." Lilith's smile widened, too wide. "I'll let him know," she whispered. That night, Claire dreamed of Liam. He was in a dark place, surrounded by shifting shadows, his mouth open in a silent scream. Behind him, Lilith's long, clawed hands reached out. Claire woke up, gasping. She knew Liam hadn't left. He was trapped, and she had to get him back. The gateway below. Claire broke into Liam's house the next day. It was dark, freezing, and smelled of decay. Then she heard it, the scratching. It led her to the basement, where she found the trapdoor. It pulsed as if something beneath it was breathing. Taking a deep breath, she yanked it open. A wave of foul air rushed out, filled with whispers that weren't meant for human ears. Below, there was no basement, just a spiraling staircase descending into endless darkness. Claire hesitated. Then she heard Liam, a weak, trembling voice. "Claire, help me." She had no choice. She stepped into the abyss. She is from the underworld. The staircase led to a place that shouldn't exist. A black wasteland stretched endlessly, filled with twisted figures that cried out in agony. The ground squirmed beneath her feet, shifting like living flesh. And then she saw him, Liam bound in chains, his skin beside him, her human form melting away. Her true body was a mass of writhing shadows, her eyes burning like twin suns. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. Claire grabbed Liam's hand. His fingers were ice cold. "No one leaves the underworld," Lilith hissed. The ground cracked open. Black hands shot up, clawing at Claire, pulling at her clothes. Claire grabbed a rusted iron dagger from the ground. Where had it come from? She didn't care. She plunged it into Lilith's chest. The creature let out a piercing scream, her form flickering, her shadowy body twisting in agony. The underworld trembled. Liam yanked Claire toward the staircase. They ran. Behind them, Lilith shrieked, her voice 1,000 tortured souls, screaming as one. The darkness surged toward them, but as soon as they reached the trapdoor, Claire slammed it shut. Silence. The air was still. The house was normal again. Liam gasped for breath, his eyes hollow. Claire held his trembling hand. "It's over," she whispered. But in the dark corners of the basement, the shadows shifted. Lilith wasn't gone. She was waiting. And next time, no one would escape.